Hey, it's the Barbarian Dung Collector. I return again pretty soon. I thought I wanted to start up a few videos on the Kvegathale divinities and their particular spirits, their particular lairs, because the biggest thing for me that I've seen, and this is specifically going to be how to implement them into your game, how to role play them if they come up, it's because one of the biggest issues I've seen in games, even from good FTs, is that they play the divinity or their spirits, like Elsam, succubi, or mules, nanooks, or Tuhuls, Vipianen, and they play it in such a way that is underwhelming and just kind of takes the wind out of the scene for me. So I'm going to be starting with Elsam. But first of all, because this is the first video, I wanted to get a few things, sorry about that twitch. I wanted to get a few things and this is very stream of conscious. I have no specific plan going through this. I might actually write something up for in the future of how to talk about the divinities and their spirits and stuff. But the last time I did that with ogres, I ended up with a 40-minute video that somehow seemed more rambly than my actual rambles. So a few things to consider. First of all, what's the overall theme of Within the Ring of Fire, because that applies to how you play the divinities, because it isn't like D&D. It isn't a game where it's just, anything. It's pretty broad, but it does have an opinion, as the guys on Black Lodge Games would say. And that general opinion, in my mind, is this sort of gritty, primal, pre-modern sword and sorcery. Now, it's pretty broad. There are, of course, areas where it sort of tips slightly out of that, like the Kalfars literally being capitalists, or Freyne merchants being basically, Victorian-era mercantilists. But overall, it's that primal, gritty, grimy, pre-modern sword and sorcery vibe. So the divinities especially should encapsulate that vibe. They shouldn't necessarily be like these sort of funny, quirky figures. And I've seen it played, and the argument is they really don't care about the mortals, but that's not true. Divinities have a particular brand they want to put forward, showing up and just being like super, just goofy because you don't give a shit about these lesser beings makes sense on paper until you consider the fact that you have a particular reputation and the way you're viewed by the mortals that helps define you and helps define your power. So you obviously will be acting the way you present yourself in the texts, the way you're supposed to be presented, according to the reputation you've constructed. Whether or not that acting is genuine, you certainly won't be kind of showing up and kind of being dopey and, kind of like, exceptions. There's Raxel, but even he shouldn't come across that ridiculous. So that's a good thing to note, sort of that general vibe, that theme. Another thing to note, the things that Andrew Wood talks about in his videos that I've seen that kind of apply to Divinity's personality, right? you have their agenda, which for me personally, if I have one criticism of 77 Thrones Theological Codex, which I love that book a lot. I love all the Within the Ring of Fire books, but that one is particularly good. But if I have a particular criticism, it's that agenda is not a section in that book. In my opinion, every divinity should have like agenda and then kind of written down what it is. And I mean, most of them have their agendas explained, but to have it really be like specified, because like sometimes I'm like, what's Cureleaf's agenda? You know, I know his general values and the way he acts, but like his agenda is a little less clear. So agenda and then dominions. Divinities see everything in the terms of their dominions. They act according to them, they live according to them, they think according to them. Their entire world is empowered and limited by those concepts. You know, Tehul is death. It's not fun. It's not ever gonna be goofy or friendly. It's death. It's straightforward. You know, Mul is the god of rage. You know, Mul can be very happy-go-lucky, but Mul he can't have a reasonable response to a slight against him. You know, he's always going to lose his shit. Pelgan is the god of civilization. Pelgan doesn't know shit about the wilderness or what to do with it, except for how to essentially dominate it and turn it into not the wilderness. So agendas and dominions are two of the most important things for playing up that personality. Another very important thing is sort of the relationship between the divinity and mortals, and how the divinity views the mortals and how the mortals view the divinity. So, for example, Lacedarnia, the way she acts towards mortals is going to be tremendously different from the way, say, Igvale does. Because to Igvale, mortals are these, you know, nothing wrong with them. They're perfectly nice, although they're kind of these flesh-bound anomalies. They're these breathing things that are just kind of part of the general movement and sort of flow of things. So Igvale does not have any particular, you know, deep interest in you individually beyond your ability to give her worship or to act on her ways. She also isn't malicious. She has nothing against you. She just doesn't really care that much. Whereas for Lacedarnia, to her, you're her children. You're her children, and you have great potential, and there are things you do wrong, but it's okay because you can be better. And she wants you to be safe and happy and healthy. So she is going to act very differently. She is actually, even though, yeah, maybe she's not like super in touch with one individual mortal, but she's concerned about the well-being of mortals for their own well-being, not for just her own purposes. So sort of the relationship between the divinities and mortals, that's important. And finally, in that specific interaction, what is the divinity's goal and how are they manifesting? Because that's super important, you know, and those should come together. If he who has many names wants you to take on a particular quest, he's almost certainly not going to show up in his true form. He's going to send either one of his angels shape-shifted, or if it's particularly important and he's feeling a little bit frisky, he'll shape-shift and show up in a particular form and try to put you on that quest. Now we can kind of get started with Elsam. So Elsam, I'm starting with her because she's the first. I'm just going to go down the list. So, Elsam, she's the goddess of a few things. First of all, she's a goddess. So she's the daughter of Ahura Mazda and Ahriman. So she has within her this sort of conflict between this virtuous, enlightened and sort of wise nature and this sort of corrupted, nihilistic nature. So it's those things come together to create that spite that is so core to her in these modern cycles, and that sort of bitterness from knowing what is right, knowing that right thing won't work, and so doing the wrong thing because it will work, but still feeling bad about it. So that's kind of the way I like to see those things coming together. So when she shows up, there should be that conflict in the way she speaks. She sort of speaks with the language and the sort of eloquence of an angel. And she should use very sort of moralistic language, telling you what you should do, what is right, what will set things proper, that sort of thing. But then with this sort of demonic intonation and this little bite to it, that just comes out because she is a very manipulative goddess, but that bite should be there just behind the visage she's putting forth, because she's not fully trying to hide it. Especially when she's angry with you, she's going to smile and she's going to take you apart, because she wants you to hurt. This goddess like Cinder is not just going to, Mool might just come down and you're dead. But Elsam, like Cinder, is going to take you apart. She's going to ruin your life. Imagine like a psycho ex-girlfriend, and that's how she's going to talk to you when you're angry. No, I'm fine, yeah, no. And another thing to understand is that she sees herself as sort of royalty amongst the divinities. Don't get me wrong, she hates herself. She knows she's done something particularly wrong, that she very much regrets that she failed in her duty because she gave in to her lusts. But she was one of the ones holding that wall between light and dark. So she is not frivolous in the way she speaks. She is not, she may come across as whiny sometimes, but she is not foolish. She's not nonsensical. She is important. She is one of the top 10 in her eyes. She's one of the big ones. And so she's going to come down to you and look at you with that condescension and that power, and she expects it to be recognized. So that's something to note. Now we can kind of look at the dominions, because those are really fun and really important. She is, in my opinion, first and foremost, the goddess of the dawn. Spite and bitterness and selfishness and treachery and traitors are all up there, and we'll get to those in general, but I want to specify the dawn specifically, because a lot of people focus on the spite, but before she was the goddess of spite, she was the goddess of the dawn, and she still is. And what does that mean? What do you think of when you think dawn? You think of a new beginning. You think of light coming and darkness behind it. You think of beautiful pink and purple and red displays, yellow too. You think of this sort of early you're a little bit groggy, your eyes are blurry, and not everything is clear depending on when you woke up. But generally, if you're living in Cavagathail, you woke up a little before, a little after, or during the dawn. So you are in that wake up mode, and the way she acts has that effect. You're not quite awake yet when you're talking to Elsam. The way she talks, it's like certain things are sort of beyond you. Like she mentioned something that you don't understand yet, but then later you kind of, oh, I get it. That's what she was talking about. And so play up that enigmatic, but not completely ununderstandable. She implants when she speaks. She doesn't tell, but she implants it in you. And then generally some of the other dominions to put together: spite, selfishness, bitterness, and treachery and traitors. Elsam is cruel. She is a bitter, spiteful little person that is not truly ready to accept you as a total ally and a total minion until you're like that too. And so until there's nothing left to strip from you except for your guilt, which is what she'll leave you with, which at that point, if you're just a selfish, bitter, shameful, guilty mass of self-loathing, who's willing to hurt other people and feel bad about it, you are then the perfect cleric of Elsam. You are now ready to be a status 10 cleric of Elsam. But until then, you are going to be as much her victim as you are her instrument. So when she speaks to you, she's going to be looking for vulnerable spots, and she's going to be sticking it in. Even if she's pretending not to, and early on it's going to start subtle, and you're not really going to be aware of it, but you're going to kind of, I kind of felt that, when she mentioned brought up that area where I didn't quite achieve what I wanted. And then as it goes on, it gets more direct, and it gets harsher, and at this point you're just accustomed to taking it, but it still hurts. And so you're just, and at that point you're in the mindset that you kind of deserve it, because she's going to make you do things. She is going to make you do things that you will feel bad about. And she's not going to be like Ahriman, right? Ahriman will make you do terrible things, and he will strip away your empathy, he will strip away your care, and he will turn you into a sociopath. That's kind of his ultimate goal in a lot of ways. Elsam will make you do terrible things and then say, wow, you did that. Oh my, yeah, that's on you. I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you did that. How could you do that? And she's not going to give you any justification. She's not going to give you any comfort. And she's not going to give you any forgiveness either, even though she's the one who made you do that. So with this bitterness and this spite, she is very manipulative. She is the goddess of seduction. She's going to use that. She's going to tap into your simple, direct desires, and she's going to use those to make you achieve her goals and take you apart. And after, at the end, you're a blubbering, heartbroken mass with nothing to give her, then she casts you away. She might kill you at that point, but it's unlikely. She'll probably cast you away into a life of pain and suffering, where you might end up killing yourself. But if you come out the other end bitter, and you know she did this to you, and a part of you hates her for it, but a part of you admires her for it, and you're just now this shallow, hollowed out individual full of guilt and shame and bitterness, but you're still going to keep doing these bad things because it's your only way to get ahead, then her tactic will change. The way she talks to you will change. She will become almost motherly, because she used to help the goddess of motherhood. She used to be her greatest ally. So she'll become your sort of, misery loves company. It'll become like that feeling, like that expression of just, all right, you're a shitty, awful person, and you've got all this shame and guilt. Let's be shitty, awful people together. And she's going to guide you. Now, what is her agenda? Because that's very important. Elsam's agenda is to bring back the sun and save the world. That's the ultimate goal. Now, what does that include? Sacrificing pretty much all the Freyin souls, for one. Breaking hearts and hollowing people out to increase her power. So generally terrible, awful things, but it's all for the most noble goal, which is to bring back the sun so that she can be forgiven, so that everyone can be forgiven, because in Elsam's mind, no one can be forgiven until she is. Because she can't forgive herself. She can't. She hates herself. That's what her agenda is powered by. She hates herself for doing a terrible thing. So she's going to have that bite when she speaks to you. But remember that sometimes that bite turns back on Elsam as she aggrandizes herself, and you can sometimes sense that little bit of self-loathing. And once you're her full minion, just this awful, wretched creature, then it just comes out directly. And she's like, yeah, I used you because I'm a monster, and now you're a monster. And she's just going to come out and say it. I'm awful, and you fell for it, which makes you just as bad. Of course, Elsam doesn't believe you're just as bad as her. No one is nearly as bad as Elsam in Elsam's eyes, which is why she's so dedicated to saving the world so that she can be good again. She wants to bring the sun back, and she wants to destroy Ahriman. She hates Ahriman. Understand that. For all her willingness to support corruption, it's a type of corruption. And so in all that blackness and all that evil, deep down, there is that shard of good that should come out sometimes. Elsam hates the enforcers. Elsam may be a bitter, wicked, awful goddess, but she is absolutely going to send aid to the enemy of the enforcers. Why does she hate them? Because they basically killed her brother and Crush, and she can't stand that because they misuse the light. Elsam sees herself as somewhat good because she is bad and knows she's bad and says she's bad. She says, hey, I'm guilty. I'm using evil things to achieve a good end, and I'm a bad person for it. I'm a monster. What do the enforcers do? We're the good guys. Our tactics? No, they're good. They're not evil. It's not evil to mass murder people. It's not evil to send people to hell. We're the good guys. And he who has many names, what does he want? He wants to be the new sun, which runs completely counter to reviving Ahura Mazda. Understand that Ahura Mazda, so many people want to play it up like, oh, well, if Ahura Mazda had survived, you would be super cruel. And no. He's the most good entity to ever exist in Kvagathel. More than sand, more than Lacedarnia. He is righteousness. He's not the divinity of righteousness. He is righteousness. The right and the good and the just are all his to decide, for he is the one who invented those concepts. And he is made of those concepts. And Elsam knows that. and she knows she wants him back. And so there should always be, in that spitefulness and that bitterness and all that sad self-loathing and evil and seduction and cruelty and genocide and manipulation, there should be in Elsam that sense of hope that always rings true. Why is there always an out? You never get away from Cinder when she manipulates you and decides to destroy you. You can run from Elsam. And sometimes she won't come after you. If you really get away, if you're now a married mother with children, sometimes Elsam will just look for another victim and she'll justify it. She'll say you're too weak. She'll say, oh, you forgave yourself, even though you did all these bad things. You're pathetic. I don't want you. When really she knows that maybe you can go. Maybe just maybe it's okay for you to be happy. So, and that should come out when she speaks very subtly. So it's layers. At the top, she's trying to manipulate you and get what she wants through seduction and trickery and sort of even honesty of like, hey, here's what's happening. Here's what I need to do. Below that is this bitter, selfish cruelty, just spiteful, just you suck. And below that is that core agenda of wanting to save the world, wanting to bring back the good, to bring back the light, and to defeat Armon. Below that is that immense self-loathing, that I suck, that just hurt and pain and guilt. So much guilt. She's the goddess of guilt for a reason. Every feeling of guilt is a prayer unto her, and she tries to make you guilty when she speaks to you. But then below that, at the very core, even below all the self-loathing, is hope. It's love. It's love for the world and the desire to see it protected from predation. And so it's very layered. So it's like, okay, this is all really complex and gets into her psychology, but now sort of just give me the butt quack, barbarian dung collector, give me the basic rundown. I don't want all this philosophical crap. So when she shows up, first of all, it's always going to be during the dawn. Second of all, in my opinion, she doesn't shapeshift. I don't think she should be like Legion in that way or whatever. So she appears as this resplendent, beautiful, young Freyine mixed with a Kalfar, long raven black hair, and sort of a supple, slightly muscular, but not like bulky build. She's scantily clad, and she's standing there sort of in the dawn, and she will look down at you, and she'll always start with that smile as she's come to see you, and you can now see her. And so she's going to speak to you in sultry tones. She knows what you want. Not everything you want, but she knows what you want the most. And most importantly, what you want right now. And she knows what you'll do for it. Far more than you say you will. And she sort of speaks to you and kind of gets in there, and she speaks of the other divinities. She should always speak of at least one other divinity in the most just disrespectful way. Mul, not much of a god these days, and just move past it like she didn't even say anything. Tuhul, nobody likes Tuhul. That sort of thing. And now her spirits, because they're the spirits are always less oomph, big than the divinities, but you're far more likely to meet them. Sorry about that. Headset came off for a second. Spirits are obviously far less oomph than the divinities, but you're far more likely to meet them, and they need less description here. So the succubi, they used to be goodly, loving angels, but their love has been warped into something bitter and selfish and sexual and spiteful. So how are they going to approach a mortal? They're going to approach you like you're an object of their desire. They're going to speak to you in very cajoling and bitter tones. They're extremely manipulative, but they're not as good as Elsam. You may be able to get away from Elsam when she's not there, but when you're talking to her, you're going to do what she says. Most of the time, not counting like epic, heroic moments. But with the succubi, no, there's going to be rules involved. You can say, no, back, because what they are at their core is something very ugly. They're beautiful on the outside, and they seem so loving and kind, but there's just something that used to be great in there that's just nasty now. And it comes out in the way they speak, the things they want from you, and the things they're willing to give you, and how quickly they promise those things. And they give, most spirits, they give promises carefully. Most spirits, even the more wicked ones, take promises seriously. Not the succubi. They speak to you and they say, of course, I promise you that on the morrow, if tonight you kill the Duke, your father will live again. And it's just a lie. It's just a straight up lie. Now, some may be loath to do that because they don't want to empower Loptiv, but really they're still going to lie to you. And they are far more sadistic than Elsam, the succubi, because they're far more simple. They want to take you apart, and they want to do it now, and they want to do it more quick. They just want to see you fall to a blubbering mass and see you be guilty and shameful. They don't need it to be as temporary as Elsam does. They just want to hurt you. And they may act as Elsam's instruments, and that may be part of the path to getting you to the point of full destruction and change. But usually when they interact with you, it should be a bit more overt, although they're still very manipulative. They're still very charismatic. And of course, if you're a Freyine, they're going to kill you. They're just going to try to kill you. They're going to try to break you, turn you into a blubbering mass of fear and guilt and shame, and strip away. They especially want to strip away your piety if you're a Freyine. So they're going to manipulate you and lead you astray until nothing is left of that belief, until you don't care anymore. You just don't feel Dazazea's love, and that's when the succubi will kill you and bring your soul to Elsam. So obviously a little bit rambly, but I think I gave a pretty good general idea of how to play her, how to talk, how to describe, when these things come up. And of course, there should be darkness and light around the succubi. They should be coy, and usually it's going to be succubi interacting with you, because Elsam can only interact with you during the dawn. So they should be coy and sweet, but just sour and bitter and nasty behind all that sweetness. And in either case, there should be really intense descriptions of their beauty and their ugliness, of just how much of the things they say hurts and how gross they can be, because they can genuinely be gross. The things they want to do to you and the things they want you to do for them. So keep that all in mind. Next up is, of course, going to be Lacedarnia. Or no, I think Quillicalian. I'll have to check. But thanks for the video. I'd appreciate feedback. Obviously, I love compliments, but constructive criticism is actually preferred. I want to improve this. But yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.